Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're doing a first impression review of the Real-Foot Highlander boot. Let's take a look at it. Up front, you've got extra wide toe box, and I really mean extra wide because there's a ton of room for your toes to splay out. And I reviewed the Trekker High last video, which also has a similar toe box but with a leather upper. And I was really surprised, because like I have feet that look like this, they're medium width, but I really enjoy actually having a ton of toe box space. There are a number of benefits to it. It's like, first of all, you have a little more room to display your toes. If you're using like a toe spacer, that also gives you more room. And then it also just has a really good grip, going on things. There's just more surface area to wrap around rocks and trees and tree limbs. And, I feel like it's going to be really good for icing conditions. It hasn't gotten down that low in Rochester, New York yet, but I'm really excited to see how it's going to work for that. And this is kind of like a slightly more insulated version of the Trekker High. They're pretty similar, but it does have a little more puffy vegan lining here. And the breathability seems to be pretty decent. Usually synthetic is a little less breathable than like wool, for example, but when you make it more puffy, there's a little more air or room for the air to circulate. It feels really soft. I like the tongue on this one. It's like a pillow for the front of your ankle, It's like very soft and squishy. And it's nice to have that padding because if you have laces here that go up higher, they can sort of bite into that tendon that goes up the front of your foot, but none of that is happening with these boots. They feel extremely comfortable everywhere. They're really soft. There's nothing rubbing, nothing pinching. One thing I'll say about Real-Foot is that even though they have an extra wide toe box, they do get a little bit slim in here, but it's not a problem at all with these boots because they're so soft and flexible, and you have plenty of lace here to really open them up and wrap around your foot if you have a high arch or whatever you need. So I don't really think it's an issue. And even though you can see that it's slimmer, like I said, like there's just enough volume and material here where it can actually kind of go outside of the shape of the sole. And then the sole itself is really bendy. Like you can see, it's not limiting your foot whatsoever. It can, just kind of widen up to conform to whatever shape your feet are. So yeah, no real problems with tightness anywhere in the boot. They've got some straps on the side for a little bit more security without making them feel stiff. A lot of things I really like about this boot, honestly. I think the Trekker High might be my favorite barefoot shoe of 2024. I still have a few coming in, but that's my opinion so far. And this one, the Highlander, is close by, I just like the green of the Trekker High. But anyways, one thing I really like is like the toe guard here. You can see it's made from, it's got a little bit of protection, but it's soft and squishy enough that it doesn't, create any pressure spots or like weird crimping issues or anything. But because it wraps so high over the front of your toe, when I was going on a walk and like going through wet grass, really plowing through, it just helped move the moisture away from the top of the shoe, because this is the place right here in the front where you get the most water penetration. And then I was also really shocked at how water resistant these are. I don't think they're completely waterproof, but whatever this material here is, it's really good, and they've got a water resistant lining in here as well in the inside of the boot. And I dunked them into a little pond and I didn't get wet. There was no moisture on the inside of the boot. And then when I got home, like they were already almost dry, which is crazy. The water seemed to wick up nicely across whatever this material is here. I like it. I think it works well. And I only got home like 45 minutes ago and already you can see it's like completely dry. As soon as I got home, I didn't feel any dampness at all inside of the boot. So really good job, Real-Foot, on this boot in terms of water resistance. Another thing that helps is that they've just added a lot of overlapping layers. If you got the toe guard here, and then it's overlapping the side layer, and then that's overlapped by the heel layer, and then you've got the heel, which extends a little bit higher. And I don't know, the water resistance seems very, very good. And I think they'll be great for slush and snow and all kinds of nasty winter conditions. They say they're rated for sub-zero conditions. And I think that's true, not necessarily because they have a ton of insulation, but because they have so much room. They're definitely warm up here, where the insulation's a little thicker. But then here, you can just see like how much room this boot has. You can stack up probably like 2 or 3 layers of socks. But one thing I will say is that I got the 44, which is what I usually get in most brands, and they did feel a little bit short, especially with thick socks. So if you're getting them for really cold winter conditions and you're planning on wearing thicker socks, or you're kind of like on the edge, you know, between sizes, then I would definitely recommend going a size up because they did feel a little bit snug for me in the length. Got a pull tab on the back. One other thing that I noticed, I like these lace holds here. I think they hold well, but the two lace hooks up here feel like they're a little bit loose. So it's not a problem like when I'm walking, you know, once I go out, but when I'm like lacing the boots up, they just kind of can easily fall, you know, out of there. So I actually liked on the Reelfoot Farmer Winter, they had a different style of lace lock, and you can see like they hold really well. So once you put them in there, they don't come out. And so I think that would be one good improvement for this boot, is if they just used the lace locks that they had on the Farmer Winter. In terms of insoles, my favorite is usually just like a thin wool felt insole because it's really flexible, doesn't affect the ground feel, but wool is temperature regulating, moisture wicking, antimicrobial. It's really amazing, feels soft, you know, and everything. But one problem with a softer insole like this is that like the Reelfoot boots are so light and flexible, you can actually run in them. And if you go down like a steep hill, because there's so much room in the front, especially because I haven't cut these for an extra wide boot, they can kind of do like this, you know? So Reelfoot has a number of different insoles, and this would be the thinnest one. This cork insole has a little bit of synthetic insulation on top, and it's sort of perforated on the bottom, which helps with breathability a bit. But this is kind of nice if it's like super cold or if it's rocky and you need a little bit more protection. It's got some nice squishiness to it. You know, it's cork in the middle, so natural materials are always nice, always appreciated. And it has a good balance, you know, of like squishiness versus a little bit of firmness. They've also got a thicker one, which is basically the same thing, just with a little bit more cork. And this would be nice if you're in like super cold temperatures, or also, you know, if you're really wet conditions and you're worried about water getting into the bottom, it just creates a little bit more separation between your foot and the bottom of the shoe. And then finally, they've got this one, which is kind of cool. It reflects light, looks like something from Tron, you know, Space Age, but then you've got the natural cork. And this is good if it's really wet conditions, you know, you need like a layer that's going to separate you from the bottom. It kind of helps reflect your body heat back up to you and the cold away from the bottom of your foot. I also like to wear Injinji merino wool toe socks because they spread out your toes, but the wool is also antimicrobial, temperature regulating, moisture wicking, you know, all of that stuff. So they're really nice for cold conditions, and also if you're doing faster stuff, you know, they breathe really well. But if you want a vegan option, Reelfoot also has cotton toe socks. Okay, back to the boot. One thing I think they could add is just a little strip here that the top laces could go through to hold the tongue in place, because one thing that happens is because it's so padded and that there's not as much padding here, is that, you know, it can kind of go off to the side. It's not a big deal because it's soft. It's not like it's rubbing or anything, but you know, that's just something to note. And then it also has a gusseted tongue, you know, so the good features just keep coming and coming with this boot. I'm really impressed, honestly. I think, you know, like when I did my dip, I was going up to here and, you know, water didn't get in, which is great. In terms of the sole, it's 4 millimeters, so it's very thin, extremely flexible, feels really similar to like a Vivo Barefoot casual sole, or Wildlane, and a lot of these brands are pretty similar, the ones that have thin sole, but it has a nice kind of lightweight casual trail tread that has some grip to it, especially when you bend it, it opens up a little bit. And I love this sole. I think it's very flexible, it's got a good balance of lightness and, you know, really good ground feel, but also a bit of protection. You know, it's a fairly rugged rubber, even though it's not too thick. And like I said, you can stack up some of Reelfoot's insoles in there if you want just a little bit of more protection, but I've not found it to be a problem at all, especially if I have just a little thin, soft insole in there for just a little bit of padding like on roads. But it feels amazing for urban terrain. It feels great on gravel. You do have to be more mindful on like larger, sharp rocks, you know, because they could puncture a thinner sole like this. But in general, for most hiking conditions, like going out in dirt trails and stuff like that, it's really nice. And when I was taking the Trekker High out, one thing I noticed is that even though I don't technically need the extra wide toe box, it's just so nice for giving you that extra grip. And for people who are looking for something that works a little bit better on black ice, this would probably be a good option. Obviously, no boot is going to save you from a super slick surface because there's just not enough for it to grab onto, but yeah. A larger sole like this might make the difference between you falling or not falling. Like I said, this is the Reelfoot Trekker High. I love this boot. I think the design's really cool, you know, with a little bit softer back. I love the green color. It's basically the same thing as the Highlander, but just not quite as puffy, a little bit lower. So I'd say there's probably like a 5-degree difference in these, you know, like maybe these would get up to maybe 60, 65, and then the Highlander is maybe like 55, 60 max, but they're pretty similar. They also have a ton of room that you can just really stack up thick socks in there, but again, they do run a bit short. Same sole and just a leather upper. Then there's the Farmer Winter and Spring. These were the first ones that I reviewed from Reelfoot in terms of boots, and the leather is just a little bit tougher. You can feel it's got a little more structure to it, so kind of like getting into lightweight work boot territory. Like I said, I love these lace locks on top, but it just doesn't have as much insulation as the other two. They do have the Farmer Winter Spring, which is what this is, and then they have the Winter, which is a little bit more insulating, but same sole, and again, extra wide toe box. If you don't quite need an extra wide boot, this is a Vivo Barefoot Gobi Hyper. It's got a very generous toe box and stretchy material here on the top, also bungee laces that make it really easy to open up the top of the boot. Again, a lot of material, kind of like Reelfoot. And it's also very convenient to slip into. This is one of my favorite boots that I've tested this year just because of the convenience. You know, it's got a similar puffy type insulation, and you can really stack up socks in here to make it as warm as you want. I would say Reelfoot is actually a little more water resistant, but Vivo also has a nice wraparound cover in the front, which can help, and then it goes up even higher on the sides. So both boots, pretty good water resistance, but you know, not completely waterproof. And then in terms of the sole, it's 3.7 millimeters. So it feels really similar to Reelfoot. Actually, Reelfoot is slightly more flexible, I think, because they've got a little bit deeper tread. Vivo has a little more surface area here, so I think the durability is just a little bit better on like gravel and stuff like that, but they're both pretty similar in terms of being good for urban terrain or minimal trails. For a leather option, there's also the Vivo Barefoot Gobi Warm Lines, and this one has even more room, which I like. This is probably the closest Vivo style to actual extra wide, and you know, once you open up the laces, you can get a ton of room in there. Again, I can stack up 2 layers of socks. If I start using thicker socks, I think there's just not quite as much volume here as there is with Reelfoot, so that's something to consider. But yeah, again, puffy synthetic lace insulation that works really well, and then 3.7 millimeter sole, which is stitched, and that's one feature I like about these, and that I would like to see Reelfoot add maybe. But there is the consideration of like, if you add the stitching, it does decrease the water resistance, especially when you first get the boots. So, you know, pros and cons. Finally, if you want something a little more rugged, this is the Soft Start Switchback. It's also got a super flexible upper, but with full wool insulation. It's very warm, really breathable. In terms of width, this is the regular one, but they also have an extra wide primal version that is more similar to Reelfoot. I would say Reelfoot is just slightly wider, but they're pretty similar. In terms of water resistance, I would say actually less than Reelfoot and Vivo Barefoot. It tends to be a good one for like dry, really cold temperatures. If you're in a super wet climate, maybe this wouldn't be the one because it can let moisture in right through here where it's stitched to the bottom of the sole. But this is definitely the best tread for like gnarly trails or really wet conditions, because Vibram has a super grippy rubber, and I love this sole. This is the Mega Grip. It's got protection on the outside, a little wider panels for rocky type of stuff, and then it's got these triangle grips on the inside, which gives you some really, really good grip for slippery conditions. And overall, the sole is 6 millimeters, and then they've added like 3 millimeters of foam in the middle, so it feels really good and very protective without sacrificing, you know, agility whatsoever. All right, so that's my first impression review of the Reelfoot Highlander and Friends, and I'll let you guys know how it goes in the long-term review, but for now, I'm like really impressed, and this is definitely one of my favorite Barefoot boots of 2024. However, if you would like to support the channel, you can shop with the referral links down below, browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Reelfoot Highlander or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, catch you next time, peace!